If you were training for a 5K run, you don't run at 2 in the morning just because it's harder. And yet somehow as parents, the storyline is that in the middle of the night, when it is the hardest to do anything, that we're supposed to work even harder and not just give our babies what it is they need to fall asleep most easily. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby's sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Baby Sleep Connection podcast. I'm your host, Heather Boyd, and we are talking today about working hard on your baby's sleep. Now, any of you listening who has a baby who is not sleeping through the night or who needs support at night, which is pretty much every single one of you, is going to understand and appreciate what I'm saying when I say that working hard on sleep is hardly working for you. I'm going to guess that most of the time, the effort that you're putting in is not getting you the outcome that you're hoping for. Now, for most of our lives, I think that most of the time, the harder we work, the more likely we are to get our goal. Whether it's getting a job, training for a marathon, getting good grades to get into a program. These things take working hard in a way that we're familiar with, we've been raised with, we've become an adult working hard this way, and yet hard work in the way that we're used to doesn't work for baby sleep. That effort, that grit, that perseverance, that clinging to the hard work just doesn't match up with getting the outcome. The outcome being whatever magical goal for sleep or impression that we have around what our babies should be doing if only we worked hard enough and did it. In fact, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about one of the lines that I hear so often around sleep training, which is that those who don't sleep train are being lazy and sleep training is hard work and it's a responsibility. And I think, gosh, that's part of where this gets derailed, isn't it? This sense that if you're not doing the hard work, you're somehow not doing the job you're supposed to as a parent. And we seem to make it harder on ourselves than we need to. And we make it harder just because we think we should, just because we think it's the way that it should be. One example I have for this is that if you were training for a 5K run, you don't run at 2 in the morning just because it's harder. And yet somehow as parents, the storyline is that in the middle of the night, when it is the hardest to do anything, that we're supposed to work even harder and not just give our babies what it is they need to fall asleep most easily. And in that way, it seems like sleep is really the opposite of this hard work. It's the opposite. And instead of working hard to make sleep happen, we need to figure out the easiest way to make this happen. And I want to talk for the rest of this episode about some of the things you can do to make sleep easier that are not going to push your goal or your aspiration for sleep further away. In fact, in a lot of ways, it brings it closer, because when you're working less hard on sleep and you're working in ways that actually support your baby where they're at, it means you are saving energy, and goodness knows that energy is precious, right? You don't have a lot of extra energy right now. It also means you're spending less time trying to make sleep happen because you're finding what I often refer to as the path of least resistance. Why is it we're looking for this resistance in sleep? It's almost an obsession, isn't it? That we feel like if it's easy, we're not doing it right. And my view is, if you can find the path of least resistance, that path that allows you to meet your baby's need in the easiest and safest way possible, almost like watching how water comes down a mountain. It doesn't go leaping over the high peaks and the jagged rocks. It's finding the lowest path it can to get down. It's going with gravity. So maybe the way to think about it is go with gravity, like lean into where things are headed, lean into the need that your baby has. Now, here are my 5 ways to work less hard and get better sleep. The first is get really comfy with your baby's sleep needs. There's only so much sleep in 24 hours that your baby needs. So when I'm talking about sleep needs, I'm talking about what is it that your baby needs to get over a 24-hour period that is going to fill up their need for sleep. If you were trying to get your baby to nap more often or longer, and they've already got all the sleep that they need, you're working too hard on your baby's sleep. There are babies who have a lower than average sleep need. In fact, statistically, half of all babies have a lower than average sleep need. But if we look at what's the typical range of what we can expect at particular ages for sleep, there are some babies who need more than that, and there are some babies who need less. And for those parents with babies with low sleep needs, it is a hard gig because so often you're looking at this chart that tells you how many naps they're supposed to be getting, how long those naps should be, and how much nighttime sleep. And your baby is not measuring up. You do the math every which way, and the numbers are just not matching up at all. That may be, especially if your baby is actually seeming pretty joyful and happy and engaged, they may be getting all the sleep that they need in a 24-hour period. You can't squeeze more sleep out of a baby who has had enough sleep in their 24 hours. So get really comfy with the idea that you may have a baby whose sleep needs are being met. Whether it's average, lower than average need, or higher, it all has to do with what are your expectations around what your baby needs to have and are they already getting it. The second suggestion that I have as a way to work less hard and get more sleep is to consider what your baby needs from you to sleep well. So we talked about this earlier, and this is well beyond actual sleep hours, and it's more about your response as a parent, the actions that you're taking to help your baby feel safe and secure enough to fall asleep. Once you know or have given some thought to what is it that actually works best, whether it's nursing or rocking or safe bed sharing or singing or changing bedtime, consider doing it. By working so hard to make sleep look a particular way, instead of accepting that this is what works for your baby, you're working harder than you need to. And I am all about the easier path. When it comes down to it, needs are there to be met, not to be changed. So what if you leaned in and accepted that your baby's need at this point in time was for you to do fill in the blank to help them sleep? This can really help overnight when that narrative in your head starts going about what you should be doing, what will teach them sleep versus helping them have this independent sleep unfold naturally as their brain matures. The third strategy I have is simply to change strategies. We tend to get stuck trying the same thing over and over and over again and thinking, maybe it's just not time, so I'll just keep trying. Maybe I'm just not trying hard enough, so I'll keep trying. Or maybe I'm just not doing it right, so I'm going to keep trying until I get it right. Or maybe my baby is almost asleep and this is just around the corner, and if I just keep doing this, it's going to work eventually. I've heard parents say that they've worked and worked and worked and worked at a strategy, and eventually their baby falls asleep. And I always think, well, gosh, I think they would have fallen asleep by that point with almost anything. The only challenge is that by the time they fall asleep with you repeating this strategy is now you're absolutely exhausted and have hit a wall. Because it's not fun trying to do the same thing over and over again and it's not working and you're just waiting and hoping. Back when I was in high school, I was a tutor for a girl who was really struggling with math. And I came in with all the tutoring strategies that I'd been taught as a tutor to support her with math. I had lots of strategies that I could pull from. But I remember even now what it was she said to me when I said, look, we could try this, or here's an idea that would support you in doing better on your next test. And she said, well, My strategy has always been to just cram at the end, stay up really late all night and study, and that's worked well for me. I thought, well, gosh, that strategy wasn't working anymore. She was in high school now, she was in grade 9. The strategy wasn't working, so change the strategy. Now, the temptation, of course, and this fits right back in with the theme of finding ways to work less hard. The temptation is, okay, Heather, if you're saying use a new strategy, I have like 5 things I can try. So I'm just going to cycle through them all. I'm going to throw all the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying when I say change to a new strategy is look at what is not working and let that part go. Find something that actually has a chance of working. Try it out, have some curiosity, but don't feel the need or the pressure to try everything all at once, like spaghetti against the wall, to try to figure out how to get your baby to sleep. If one thing isn't working, don't keep repeating it over and over again. I think there's an expression that to repeat a failed experiment over and over again is like hitting your head against the wall. Try it. Try a new strategy. If you've given it a go, and I always say, like, give it enough of a chance that you actually get to learn something from it. If it's not working after that, like after a few nights or a few naps of trying this, and you're paying attention to how this is feeling and how this might be working for your baby, and it's just not getting you anywhere, don't feel the need to stick with it. Move on to something else. The 4th tip that I have for you is to stop trying to get ahead of the game when it comes to your baby's sleep. Be okay with playing catch up. Your baby, whether it's sleep or walking or talking, will almost always be driving your parenting. Your baby is always going to be one step ahead because it is their development that's unfolding that you're responding to. I talk in an early episode about why your baby is in the driver's seat of development. And this is really what we're unpacking here. You can't move your baby to a toddler bed early just to get them used to it. You've got to wait until they're showing signs that they're ready. It's like what everyone says when you're pregnant, and that is when you're saying you're not sleeping well and it's exhausting and uncomfortable and you can't get a nice, good stretch of sleep at night. And people say, much to my irritation, well, it's good practice for the sleep deprivation when you become a parent. I say, oh my goodness, no, sleep deprivation isn't something you get good at with practice. You don't need to try to be ahead of the game and somehow get practice with trying to anticipate what your baby's going to be ready for in 3 or 6 months. You've got your baby right in front of you that can tell you what they need now, or at least give you clues to what they need now. You don't need to give your toddler practice scribbling until they actually pick up a crayon. You don't need to get that practice with sleep deprivation when you're pregnant. Instead of anticipating what your baby is going to need in 3 or 6 or 9 months, look at your baby now. They're right in front of you. Figure out what it is that they need to be able to sleep as well as they can, which in turn will help you sleep as well as you can. Now, this doesn't mean there's no pre-planning. It can be really helpful to anticipate, to brainstorm, to have an idea of what you might do and what you might need when such and such happens. But in general, your baby is going to be one little step ahead. And it is at first a pretty uncomfortable feeling. And that goes back to point number 1 that I was making, where most of our lives, hard work got us where we wanted to go. So to be following in this wake of your baby's development can feel a little bit like letting go, of not working hard enough, of being lazy, but it is not. It is actually a wonderful way for not just sleep development, but all development to unfold. And the last point that I want to make around ways to work less hard and get better sleep is to know that there will be times that you do need to work hard. Change will inevitably happen. There will be a time when you're changing your baby's sleep surface. You might be moving them from a crib to a toddler bed, or from your bed to a floor bed in their own room. Any of these changes do take work, but it's concentrated work at a specific period of time, and it isn't chronic. This chronic idea that somehow you need to be working harder to make this happen. When you are going through periods of change where you are actively shaping how sleep is looking, whether it's because they're ready for something new or because something has stopped working, like your baby used to nurse to sleep and they don't fall asleep anymore, and you need to figure out how are we going to support them now when the thing that was working is no longer working, or what you're doing simply does not work for you anymore. Either something has changed in your capacity, or you're reaching that point where you think something's got to give to open up some more room for solo time or for some independence for you, or because you have a newborn in the house and you want to figure out how to nudge or shape the independence or sleep circumstances that your older baby has. During these periods of specific change, working hard is going to look still like you have curiosity to figure out what is the best path here, that path of least resistance. But working hard is also going to be about acknowledging that whenever we make a change, it does require more effort from us. That's where as well, and maybe this is where I will close off this episode. When things are getting tough enough or things have changed enough that we know we need to change something, it's when the challenge and work of change is less than the challenge of just carrying on with the way it is. We often don't wait for that moment. We're often, again, trying to anticipate what it is that we need to do to get ahead of the game and be one step ahead and to be anticipating what's going to happen. But when we're actually making change, it's because there's enough of an incentive or reason to make the effort. That's where the hard work becomes worth it. And it's usually pretty discreet. I'll give another example, and that may be when your baby is giving up naps and you know that they don't need that much daytime sleep anymore because nap times are getting really wonky and bedtime is late. And you think, okay, we need to make this shift. Our baby is doing it, but we need to respond in a different way and figure out how to shape this so that we can all get through this period of flux. Put in the hard work then so that you can, when things have settled, go back to taking the approach of less work, getting you to better quality sleep. The end of the day, what really matters is that we are able to see that the effort that we're putting into responding to our baby is what is helping sleep happen for our baby without working harder than we need to. Goodness knows parenting is hard enough without creating more difficulty for ourselves just because we're feeling the pressure to make it look a certain way. That's all for now. I look forward to catching up with you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.